As the acid man began to rush in my direction, his tentacles lashing out, flailing balls of acid that only barely reached by me, propelling into the ground and melting it away in giant chasms, scattering craters of smoldering, noxious gases that rose from the pits where they struck the ground. The mouthpiece began darting, moving away from us, thinking he was home free for the moment, until the heavy metal sphere broke down once again, separating into segments. 2 segments rapidly moved towards the downed individuals, forming cages around them, preventing anyone or anything from getting through. As the mouthpiece stopped in his tracks, "What the hell?" he said as he was beginning to near the woman downed by the tree, her form now surrounded by a steely cage that he couldn't pass through. "I already told you," I said as I disappeared from my conflict with the acid man, vanishing again and reappearing elsewhere, somewhere in between acid man and the mouthpiece, as he turned around and began looking at me, a look of worry on his face, as did Simmons, the acid man. "I'm in your head, buddy. You're not gonna run a slick one by me. I know all about your ability now. That's why you've just been sitting in the background, not doing anything. It's because your ability isn't a combat ability. No, you're more something akin to a combat medic. Your body produces a chemical compound mixed with powerful protein supplements that you're able to inject people with. Basically, the substance that you inject them with through your fingernails kickstarts a hyper-healing process, as well as boosting physical strength, endurance, and restoring them from the damage caused by overuse of their abilities. Even if they have broken and shattered bones, extreme wounds that might even prove life-threatening to a symbiote. A nice-sized dose of the chemical running through your system, and they'd be back up in no time." "Damn it! You are in my fucking head, aren't you? How are you doing that?" "I told you, reality's sort of my bitch now. Get used to it. But I suppose you really don't have to. I'm afraid this little game of yours is over," I said as I disappeared. In the moment, he started to try to look around, find where I'd be re-emerging, only to find a large fist clattering down on top of his head, slamming him into the ground beneath him with a massive thud, a smash that caused the area around him to crater in, as the rest of his body simply propelled from it, driven into the ground like a railroad spike, at which point he was no longer moving. As I reached down into his pocket, grasping out the electronic switch, placing his thumb against it as the reader opened it up, revealing the switch that I happily flipped to the green side of things. Well, that's one down. "Sorry, Simmons, the game is over, but at least you don't have to keep going with this crap. You're free to go." In the moment, Simmons looked at me for a moment surprised, before beginning to grit his teeth as the green fluid around him began to build up, growing thicker and thicker, the tendrils extending from him growing longer. "You think it's over? Of course it's not over," he said as the tendrils began to reach up, combining in the air above him, beginning to form into a massive orb of green gelatinous fluid. "Just because you beat him doesn't mean it's over. They're still watching. I don't get to stop fighting just because you flipped that stupid switch. They still have my sister. They still have eyes on me. If I don't give it everything I have, then she might as well be dead already. Hell, even if I just lose, even if I give it everything I have and it's not enough, they might still kill her. I'm sorry, Heavy Metal. But it's not over. It can't be. I can't risk it. This isn't how I wanted things to be. But you have to understand. I don't care about the mayor. I don't care about anyone in this damn city. And as nice as a guy as you seem to be, I'm sorry, but I don't care about you. There's only one person left in the world that I give a rat's ass about. And if it's a choice between her life and yours, then there's no contest, he said as the massive sphere of acid above him launched out at me. As I began trying to move away from it, it rapidly clattered into the ground nearby, exploding in a rain of acid that poured out in all directions. As fast as I was, I couldn't dodge that. I could dodge the main attack, but the splatter afterwards was basically unavoidable. Large splatters of the acid scattering against my armor, scorching into it as smoke reeled from it, and I continued to run, trying to make my pace away from it. More drops hitting me, and as I tried to make my way away from it, Simmons was right there, rushing in from the left, and again streaking out at me with one of those tentacles, whipping it by me as I narrowly ducked under it, only just evading as the conflict continued. I'm sorry, but I have to save my sister. Any price. Even if it means I have to be a killer, I'll do it. I'm not giving her up. This whole city could burn for all I care. He shouted out as we fought, as he launched a rapid sequence of attacks, doing everything he possibly could to hit me. Thankfully, I was still the faster of us. Even with the armor on, he couldn't lay a hit on me, at least not a solid one. The armor was still smoldering from the acid splashes across it, as I did my best to keep my distance. Well, I'm really sorry that it had to be that way, Simmons, but I can't exactly afford to let myself be beaten. But if it's worth anything to you, then I'm gonna try to save your sister too. And I really am sorry for this, I exclaimed as the liquid steel swirled into a giant fist above him as he began to try to move, suddenly finding shackles running from his ankles into the ground beneath him as he fired acid at the fist flying from him from above, scorching into it, but not enough to dissipate it as the massive fist clattered down on top of him, smashing him into the ground, smoke rising from it as it made contact with the acid around his body. Finally, the massive fist pulled back, large chunks pouring steam and smoke as what was left of the acid dwindled away, bits of the liquid steel crumbling like glass away from the massive fist, being so damaged that they could no longer be functional. As Simmons lied there in the crater, the acid around his form faded away, his body motionless, alive, but out cold. I really am sorry about this, I said as I gathered up the rest of the liquid steel, as large chains protruded from the gathering sphere in the air, reaching out and grasping all of the 4 individuals there, dragging them in towards Simmons as I got close into the center, standing over him, and a large sphere-like dome structure formed itself over us, and I got to work. There were some symbiotes that needed collecting, work that needed done, and I still had 2 more stops to make tonight. Collecting the symbiotes that I needed took a few moments, but afterwards the dome around me retracted, turning back to a liquid steel sphere as I stared down at Simmons and the other 3 lying unconscious on the ground. I couldn't help but feel like, even though I won this fight, the cost for winning it was too high. It was a gamble, with a little girl's life on the line as well as the mayor's. There's no guarantee that I was going to be able to save her. But the truth is, I could only do what I can do, and I just have to hope that being clever and making smart moves is enough to save all of the lives that I can. as I suddenly began to hear the sound of fireworks in the distance, looking to my left to see a smattering of bright orange fireworks going off. This one appeared to be closer in towards the rest of the city, away from the Park District. I took one last look down at Simmons. Before the wings spread out, the liquid steel broke down into a torrent of liquid that swirled around my body as I propelled myself into the air, flying in the direction of those orange fireworks and my next challenge. So far, everything seemed to be working out, at least for the most part. The only question was, would it hold?